Welcome to another episode of the Startup Lantern. Drews and I are in person today in Vail, Colorado, and we're really excited to have a live guest join us for our show. We're looking forward to sharing some new insights with you on challenges some real entrepreneurs have had as they've started their own business. So join us today for another episode of the Startup Lantern. So welcome back to another episode of the Startup Lantern. We have a special guest with us today, Ms. Rehgan Avon from AlignAI, and we're really excited to share some of the challenges she experienced as going through the startup with her new company just a few recent years ago. So thank you for joining us and welcome back.
Hi, my name is Drews McFarland. I'm your co-host and you are...
And I'm Jon Duren.
Yes, new format for us. So Rehgan, why don't you tell us a little bit about how long has AlignAI been around?
Yeah, so we started in 2020, actually. Funny story. I quit my full-time job February 28th of 2020. I had no idea that it was going to be that crazy. My full intention was to launch the company. My co-founder Brendan and I have worked together at multiple startups throughout our careers, and I felt that that was the right time to do it. So quit my job. My last day of work was Friday the 13th, March 13th.
How appropriate.
Yeah, and everybody was leaving the office along with me. And spent a couple of months just trying to figure out where the market was going to go, how people were going to react, and honestly it was the best timing for what we were trying to do.
So you already had an idea in mind of where you wanted to take the company beforehand.
Definitely.
Cool. Let's talk just a little bit about your company. So tell us about AlignAI and maybe even what sparked the idea to get you started.
Yeah, so AlignAI helps enterprises build, adopt, and govern their policies and procedures around data and AI, which is super boring for a lot of people, but for me it's super fun. My co-founder Brendan and I have spent a number of years in the enterprise AI ecosystem, and we observed the same types of problems over and over again. Mainly, it was not a technology problem, it was a people process problem. And so we wanted to solve that issue. To date, most companies were building out these like robust, massive SharePoint sites with all of their policies and procedures in there that nobody ever touched and went out of date super fast, and created a lot of confusion on what people were supposed to do, and we had tons of variants and bespoke solutions getting built, and so that's a lot of risk for an organization, and we wanted to help companies solidify that and make that easier.
Ooh. So it sounds like you had personal experience with the pain that your customers were getting. You were actually building for yourself almost more than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we worked for an MLOps company for a number of years. So machine learning operations company, basically helping highly regulated companies deploy machine learning models into production at scale, which is important because they need to use them. And that exposed some of these issues, was that they didn't have any of this stuff defined, and people were just kind of making things up as they went, and that's not what legal and risk and compliance like, as it turns out. We were building a lot of those, what we call now playbooks, for our customers very manually, and it was very painful. And so we started doing that manually at our company through services, and then found our product entry point last year and really verified that before we started building.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's fantastic. But let's step back now just a few years. Mm-hmm. You had the idea, and obviously you quit a good job to move and start a company, which mm-hmm. is a brave endeavor in and of itself.
Uh-huh. Brave's a word for it.
Brave is a good word for it, yes. Crazy.
Right.
Brave. Let's stick with brave.
We'll stick with brave.
What were some of the first challenges you faced with, okay, I've just quit my job, I'm starting a company?
Number one was, what do we call it? We ended up calling it Iconos, which is actually the name of the first satellite that was basically emitting imagery of the world back to us. So we were able to kind of see the world from space through that satellite, which was really cool. And so we wanted something that was like kind of this continuous rotational orbital like monitoring and awareness, self-awareness. So that was the idea behind the first name. We spent a long time coming up with it. Then we rebranded last year into AlignAI, which was a good move. So naming it was hard. The second was getting our first customer. So I spent the first 2 months kind of figuring out what that would look like. I've spent most of my career building up a pretty extensive network of data and AI practitioners and leaders. And so that was an easier process for me as an entrepreneur to know that I would have some customers, be able to make money, which is important immediately. So yeah, landing the first customer, figuring out how we wanted to structure and kind of talk about what we were doing, which is the messaging piece, which is hard and cringy when you look back on the first version of it, and then naming your company and trying to get people to be aware of that.
So I guess for a little clarity, because you talk about people process, we also often think of those as services, but
Yeah.
you actually have a real product
Yes.
that you can deploy, sell,
Yep.
and utilize.
So we started with services as a company because we knew the problem space very well. So we were like, we can solve this for companies manually. And that was actually great for us because it helped us navigate, like, what are they prioritizing? What's their budget structure in these enterprise organizations? How are they doing it today? We got a really good understanding of the existing landscape, which is really, really important when you're trying to think about where to build
your
the product. Yes, understanding what are they doing today, where are the pain points, where are your competitors potentially. And then we productized it because it was actually a software problem also. So it's people and process, but organizing all of that, keeping it up to date, thinking about the user experience of interfacing with that information actually drove us to want to build software around it. So we knew we wanted to build a product in the space, but we didn't want to do that wrong. So we spent 2 years really doing market research around it.
So that's actually a good segue into this. Tell us a little bit about the timeline. So you quit, you started your company. How long did you go? How long did you bootstrap? How long did it take you before you actually had like a working prototype? How long before you actually had something that was productized?
Yeah.
And, and also, like, where along that line did you end up taking in money, if you ever did?
Yeah, great question. So timeline-wise, we kicked off March of 2020, got our first customer in April. So we started our services then. So it took us about a month.
Not the greatest time to be starting a company.
Nope. But as it turns out, every company was trying to figure out operationally what to do, and data was their way to do that. So they were really in desperate need. A lot of these companies we first started working with, which our first customers were transit authorities. They were trying to figure out how do we use data to help reroute and re-optimize to support critical workers during COVID, which was great. So we were helping and, doing what we love to do. So we started early 2020. We started thinking about the product in that first year, but didn't do any kind of deep user research. We started prototyping mid last year, so mid 2022. So it was about a year and a half of doing services and establishing that. Meanwhile, we were building out what we called our templates, which is basically our repository of frameworks that people can leverage to build out playbooks in our tool. So we were building our IP for that for like the last year and a half. And then in Q3 of last year, we started our first kind of prototype and doing user research and market research around that, getting feedback from tons of different users. We started actually developing the product in early this year, launched it in June.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's super exciting. And then we started raising in end of Q1 of this year as well, and are closing our first round.
Well, that's actually really fascinating, because when you think about the way that the average product company ends up going around, they get things in a different order than what you got them, because you were able to go out because you decided to start off as a services organization. You're really building the product for yourself, but you were able to actually come to market with services early, and that allowed you to go a lot farther, which is nice. You got to the point where you weren't at a functional prototype. You were actually pretty far down the road before you actually started asking for venture.
And it's interesting because some venture capitalists like that, and some hate that. Going from services to products, you build up all of this operational structure as a company, and sometimes it's very hard to pivot away from. Services dollars can be nice. And we knew we wanted to be a product company, so everything we've done has been very intentional in that direction. So all of our services customers, we want to use our product. We know all of the buyers, it's the same buyers and same people. So I think we were very strategic about it and intentional about it, and I think if that's your objective as a company, it is a great way to bootstrap and do it that way. And our investors agree.
Well, I think we can start winding it down, but I will have to say, this is our first episode where camera didn't get to see it, but we were almost attacked by a hummingbird.
Yes. We've very rarely actually been attacked by wildlife.
That hasn't happened.
Just COVID.
Yeah, right.
Rehgan, I understand your company has a podcast as well, particularly to the AI industry. You want to share with our viewers?
Sure, yeah. So our podcast is called AI or Die. Fun little kitschy name. We talk about the news trends, we debate topics, we talk about what we're seeing in industry in terms of enterprise AI, and yeah, it's really fun. It's conversation amongst friends, and then we have some fun guests that pop in as well.
Rehgan, it's been a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you so much for joining us and for the insights about starting a company. And for you, it's real, it's recent, and that's really fantastic. It's helpful. Bruce, I'll let you close us out.
So, and if anybody is interested in your products or services, you're at AlignAI.
Yeah, it's getalignai.com.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you like what you've seen here, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section. We'd love to get back to you. We're trying to build up a community of people who are of like minds, and we'd love to hear from you. So if this has been helpful at all, like and subscribe, and we'll be seeing you next time on the Startup Lantern.
Thanks for joining.